Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Ah, yes, my friends, conservative, not bitter indeed. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for joining us. I'll tell you that yesterday was Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday. I think I alluded to this maybe in yesterday's program or the day before. I think it was yesterday's. I alluded to the fact that I was actually out of town at the what I called the Oshkosh Air Show, which is technically called the EAA. I don't know. It's Experimental Aircraft Association. They put on the world's largest air show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We drove up. My brother, my son, and I went up for a couple of days. Incredible time. I'll talk a bit about that, but I want to get back into the saddle here as well. Program today, my friends, brought to you in part by Red, White, and Brand. Friends, if you want your logo on almost anything, and by almost, I mean virtually anything, contact Red, White, and Brand at redwhiteandbrand.com. You can shop on the website there, but you can also you can contact the team at Red, White, and Brand, and they will help you with your search for items, whether that's apparel, whether that's trade show banners and displays and pop-up banners, that sort of thing, table coverings, whether it's promotional products, whether it's premium products to give to customers or staff, you name it, my friends. If your logo needs to be on it, Red, White, and Brand can help you. RedWhiteandBrand.com is where you go. You can get 10% off your order by using promo code TODD, T-O-D-D. And if you make your purchase online, you get free shipping as well. RedWhiteandBrand.com, promo code TODD. All right, so let's get into the issues today. I don't want to hear it from the stick to the issues folks out there. I want to get right into it today. One of the things that I want to pose, the question I want to pose here today, is something we've touched on before, but there's been developments. There's been developments over the past week where the administration, or in the case of what I'm about to tell you, the Senate, have taken steps to reopen or to open investigations. We got criminal referrals that are being mentioned or offered up out there, and it pertains to a series of things that have been allegedly done to this country, to the American people, at the hands of people on the left. Now, I want to pause here because one thing I am to my core, it's funny, I was talking to a friend the other day. We were talking about a lot of things, but talking about our program. And he said, he was telling me a story of a conversation he had with someone else about the program. And he said, this conservative, not bitter, that's a real thing. That's not just a catchphrase, a slogan. That's really That's really what I believe here. That's really what I am here. Not to make this about me, but of course it's all about me. But no, not just to make it about the idea, and the idea that we don't have to hate people who are different from us. In fact, if we really want to be adults about it, we try to seek to understand, I would say, first, but also seek to persuade. Because there are people, I know there's not many as a percentage, but there are people out there that can be persuaded. They really can, and they're not persuaded by what just draws the applause and the mockery of things that are being said inside of echo chambers. If everybody agrees with you in the room, you might kind of get on a rant and start to say things that everyone agrees with as far as what the other side thinks, who they are. And listen, there's problems with the other side, but I say all this to say, at the core of all of this, I believe in justice and fairness. And not, listen, I grew up in a Democrat family. My dad was a Union Democrat. I am here to tell you, I understand that is a minority group right now. Reasonable Democrats, especially with the elected kind. But there are people out there that are still reasonable who vote Democrat. I don't understand. Well, I mean, I do for the purposes of the show and to talk about it, but it still doesn't quite make sense to me. The reasons and rationale that some of these folks who I consider very reasonable people who are Democrats, why they come to the conclusion that that's where they need to put their support and cast their votes and all that. But there are problems. I say all that to say this. There are problems in both parties. I am not here to be a megaphone for the Republican Party. I'm not here to just echo the talking points of the Republican Party. That's not what I'm here for. I am here to help others hear and receive truth. That's why I'm here. And I know it's tempting to think, man, they've got it all figured out over there. Todd and his team, they got it all figured out. Oz has got it figured out here behind the scenes. That's really where a lot of this is figured out. But listen, in all seriousness, we don't. But I'll tell you this. We don't have it all. We don't have the answers to everything. That's just not the case. But what we do have is a respect and an understanding for truth. And when truth is revealed, when truth is learned, when truth is identified, it is the job of the society, the elders of the society, or even the wise in the society, to make sure that truth is never lost. Because, my friends, one of the things that we've learned in our culture and in our society is that when truth is silent, the lies begin to speak louder. And they speak into a void that has been created. It's been created by people who refuse to speak the truth. So truth is something we have to pass on to the next generation. I mentioned my son went with my brother and I. We were guests of my brother who loved this as well. But we went to this event, and one of the things, first of all, this EAA air show, and I'll get back to the point. This ties in. But one of the things that happens at this air show is there's a ton of vendors there, as you might imagine. Someone told me 600,000 people at this event. I don't know, over the course of the week or something. There's a lot of people. Lots of people. Lots of aviation enthusiasts. And there's places where you can see the latest and greatest in aircraft design. You can see the new aircraft. In fact, my son, I'm pretty proud of the guy. He's just 16, but he has started. I say started. He's done this for a while. He draws aircraft. He actually has people pay him to draw certain airplanes, like pilots or just different people will have my son draw a specific plane or a group of planes for them. He's very good at this. And when we travel or when he sees an airplane, he will draw it and often just give it to we flew on Southwest recently. He gave it to the pilots. He gave it to a flight attendant. He gives these away. Well, he did one for one of the smaller aircraft manufacturers. It's a company called Cirrus, Cirrus, I believe. And he drew one of their, I don't know exactly how this came about, but basically the marketing girl reached out to him and said, hey, we have a newer product. It's called XI. And this is me just telling you the story. They're not a sponsor. I'm just telling you this as we talk about just I'm telling the story about him because he's the next generation, right? And so there's a learning curve with what he's wanting to do professionally, but it's like that when we pass along these truths as well. So he's taking the bull by the horns here. He's doing collaborations on social media. I mean, this more sophisticated than anything that I've ventured into. So he drew an aircraft. Apparently, Cirrus has this new thing now where they'll take 12 people a year, and you can customize your aircraft that you order from them. And that includes everything. That includes the interior. That includes, I think, like some of the controls they can make look a certain way, the stitching on the seats, the paint job. There's vinyl, there's paint, there's all this stuff. They put that into the plane. It's called XI. And they were revealing one of these planes and a new design, and my son drew it. He drew it before it was released, and that was part of what they did at this social media campaign. But anyway, so he did that at the event, but he also went to some of these booths for places like Lift Academy, who was there, who's ironically here in Indianapolis, but trying to tell people about their pilot program and how they have a pipeline of training pilots to go directly into Republic. Is it Airways or airline? I don't know. But anyway, it's a regional airline that operates for Delta and a couple of others. So, but there's a learning process, right? He's 16. And so he goes, this was really for him kind of like a college fair or a career fair. He learned a lot of stuff. He learned some things, some apps where he could get some training done, some clubs and so forth that he could be a part of. He's still sifting through that. But I say all this to say, in a similar way, it's our job, just as he has an interest and an inkling to seek out and to understand information about the aviation industry, which candidly is wide open. It's one of the most confusing things to get into for a young person because there's not just a path, right? If you're going to be a surgeon, you got to go to college, get your degree in biomedicine or whatever, anatomy and physiology or something in science. Then you apply for med school, you do all that, you do your residency. To be a pilot, there's a bazillion ways, right? You can go into the military academies, Air Force Academy, Naval Academy. You could go in through an OCS program where it's an officer candidate school. You could go in and you could get your private license. You could go into one of these training programs that airlines have directly where they basically train their own folks. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, and there's different type of aircraft you can get certified for. There's a lot of different paths. And just like that, we have a role. We have a role as people who have understood truth or had truth revealed to us. This country is built upon a lot of truth. In fact, if you read that Declaration, if you read the Bill of Rights, there are a lot of things that scream truth. And there are still people out there on both sides who want to hear and receive that truth. But there are other people who want to do nothing but hear the lies and embrace the lies. That's where the radical left comes in. The radical left is as disinterested in truth as one could possibly be. The radical left does not like the way that this world was created. They don't like the creator, that's for sure. That's why I call them the godless radical left. They don't like truth. They don't like the moral law. They don't like this concept of being held accountable for breaking the moral law, which in fairness, none of us do, right? None of us like that, like to come to grips with the fact that we're all sinners in need of a savior. But it's the pride and the arrogance and the self-righteousness to say, I'm the God, right? Some of these folks believe they're the God of their own lives. They don't need God. And so one of the ways they want to erode on society's embrace largely of there being a creator is to confuse people about right and wrong. If nothing is right, or well, let's say it this way, if something is right or wrong, then that implies that there is a moral lawgiver. If there's a moral lawgiver, we haven't quite pinpointed that moral lawgiver has to be the God of the Bible, but he has to be a creator, one who created what we see and who determined by his nature, by his decisions, what is good and bad, right and wrong, true, all that sort of stuff. And so it's our job to embrace it and to pass it on. And there are people out there that don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it primarily because they like living in the darkness. I'm telling you, this sounds overly simplistic to a lot of you, but I am telling you, as surely as I'm sitting here, there are people who embrace the political ideology that says to them, you don't have to accept right and wrong, good and evil. It is what you make it. That's what they want. That's what they desire more than anything. And they more than anything don't want to hear you saying something to them that what they are doing, what they believe in is wrong or is evil or something like that. They can't handle that. Their heads explode because I think they are so convicted internally that they can't stand the idea that something in the external world echoes what they already know internally in their hearts, in their souls. And so these things that are true, we have to continue to push those out there. We have to continue to articulate them. We have to continue to educate. We have to continue to think of ways to connect these things to younger people, even to people who are older that maybe weren't taught any of these things. They weren't taught any of these things. And so as we pursue this, listen, I'm not here to say that the Republicans are the ones who are perfect and the Democrats are the ones who are imperfect, because there are people in both parties, and it is people who decide to do things that are wicked and evil, and they exist on both sides. And if we're all true with ourselves, honest with ourselves, we would all admit that all of us have chosen to do things that were not good in our lives. No doubt about it. But there's one group of people, it's a segment of the Democrat Party that embraces the evil. It embraces this anti-God leftist state of mind. That has to be destroyed. That, I don't mean physically, I mean those ideas have to be obliterated. We have to give our young people, just as my son went to this air show to learn more about aviation and a path to a career in aviation, and to see what his options were and where he could go to school and different aircraft and all this kind of stuff. Just as he did that, we have to give people some clear explanation. And we also have to pursue in the process of doing this, we have to pursue justice. And so that's what's happened here over the past week, is that there starts to be some steps toward justice. And you would have remembered last week, or I guess early this week, we were talking about some of the things that were happening, criminal referrals in, for what happened in the Obama administration with the Russian collusion delusion, the fake news, the whole fake narrative. That is beginning to be a really big issue. In fact, I saw in the news that there's a possibility Obama might be subpoenaed to testify about this. Now, here's what I want to compare and contrast, and I'll say more about this in a moment. I just want to say this, and then I have to take a little time, really short time out here. But what I want to say is, and I've said this before, the issue is we have to have a relentless desire to pursue justice, but we should not seek political retribution. That is what we don't want. We don't need. We don't want people who are out of the political majority, when they gain power, to then go after their opponents for things that were political. But if things are illegal, and that's where context matters, and that's where we need people in this country who have the ability to understand the difference between targeting someone because of political differences. Note, I didn't go after the Democrat Party as a whole, especially the rank and file. I go after a specific wing of the Democrat Party, which I believe domestically perpetrates the most evil and problems in this country. It comes from the radical left. Now, the radical left has taken over a big chunk of the Democrat Party, and that's concerning. But it's not all Democrats. There are some who are still willing to hear and receive truth. Of course, we got to communicate it the right way. We got to handle it the right way. We can't go out there and just insult people and expect them to come into agreement with us. We have to explain and we have to articulate and we have to thread the needle here between seeking justice for some of these things. And we also have to thread that needle. On the one side is justice, but on the other side is political retribution. We don't want to venture into that area. We want to venture into true justice. Not because someone is politically opposed to us, but because what they've done, allegedly, is dangerous to our society. And make no mistake about it, these allegations and, the allegations are true about the Obama administration and how they coordinated with the Clinton campaign to try to undermine the Trump administration, to try to steal, dare I say, an election from him. Those sorts of things can never be allowed to happen again. Also, I saw the Senate is looking to investigate or reopen the investigation into the Clinton email debacle, which we can talk about that briefly as well. Friends, Mike Lindell, MyPillow, I've mentioned this to you. They're grateful. They want to say thank you to those of you who have bought their products over the past 2+ years that they've been a partner with us here on our program. Many of you have bought their pillows or their sheets or their towels, their slippers. They've got a lot of products, even though they're called MyPillow. There's a whole bunch of products for your comfort, for your sleep, and you can get those at discounted prices. If you go to MyPillow.com and you use my name, Todd, during the checkout process, you're going to get discounts on, I'm going to say virtually all, it very well may be all of the products there. But there's a special they're offering right now, including, for their Percale bed sheets, that allows you to get a set of those for as low as $24.98. And that, again, is with promo code Todd at MyPillow.com. So check it out, MyPillow.com. Promo code Todd, $24.98 is the starting point, depending upon your size and so forth, for those Percale bed sheets. But there's plenty of other things as well that you can get discounts on. MyPillow.com, promo code Todd. All right, I'm in the final minute here of the first segment, and I've alluded to two of the things that are out there, one of which we've already spoken about in detail earlier this week. That is the general referral for the concerning the Obama administration and the Russian delusion, which we've talked about. But on top of that, we now have headline here: Town Hall. Senate Republicans are reopening the Clinton email probe, and I want to talk briefly about this in the next segment. And that's going to happen here in a moment, my friends, because the time is telling me it's time to take a break. So sit tight, my friends. You're listening to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woo-hooer, a hand clapper, a high-fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends. As I told you, headline here, townhall.com. Senate Republicans are reopening the Clinton email probe, written by Matt Vespa, townhall.com. Let's read a little bit of this and talk about this. Senate Republicans are reopening the Clinton email probe. It had to be done. Several thumb drives were never analyzed, with a detailed report showing that the FBI came up with laughable reasons not to do it, deviating from department policy. As Matt Taibbi, a former contributing editor to Rolling Stone, noted, the 35-page annex to Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz's 2018 report on the DOJ's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server and the 2016 election was a Keystone Cops operation. It was. With such glaring incompetence, it was reported last night. This was written, by the way. When was this written? This was written July. This was released just this morning. I thought this might have been yesterday. But anyway, being out at the air show, I've lost a little bit of track of the days or whatever. Anyway, justice is coming. But before it does, many more media people are going to have meltdowns. Now, that is obviously how this is going to be handled. Now, we have to be as wise as serpents, but as gentle as doves here. And we have to be able to see, okay, we don't want, the line is we don't want political retribution, but we want justice. Now, if you, one of the ways I've tried to explain this, and I'll briefly mention this, is the handling of, say, Hunter Biden and his laptop versus Donald Trump and his convictions, right? He's a felon. Ask the average Democrat. Ask them. Ask the average person, I don't care their party, who thinks Donald Trump should be in prison. Ask them to explain why. And they'll say a lot of things. They'll say he's a Nazi. They'll say he's a totalitarian. They'll say he's a danger and a threat to our democracy. They'll say a bunch of stuff, a bunch of words that sound like, whoa, that sounds really serious. But just continue to ask them, not in some provocative way. Okay, that sounds really terrible what you're describing there. Tell me more about that. Tell me a little bit more about what you mean when you say Trump should be in prison. In prison for what specific? I mean, what crime did he commit? Because contrary to, don't say this to them, but I'm just telling you this, contrary to common belief, you don't just get thrown into prison because you're someone that the media doesn't like or someone says a bunch of bad things about you. That doesn't warrant you being thrown into the clink. In fact, in order to go to be put into prison, one has to be charged with a crime. In order for one to be charged with a crime, there has to be laws on the books, laws that were passed by Congress if they're federal laws, or your state house if they're state laws, whatever. Laws have to be passed. They have to be signed typically by the president if they're federal laws, or by the state if they're state laws. And then when you are arrested for allegedly violating that law, you have to have evidence. So let's say the law says you can't assault a person. That's an obvious law. That's a law that comes from the moral code. That's not some administrative law. That's something that we all know intrinsically because, again, God has written it on our hearts, some of his laws, some of his nature. We know by our conscience, by our general convictions that we shouldn't be doing those things. And so let's just say that somebody is alleged to have done that. There has to be evidence. These things are defined in the law. This is what constitutes this level of assault or battery, aggravated assault. There's definitions for this stuff. And there has to be a little bit of interpretation by the prosecution. They have to say, I think that what this person is alleged to have done, what we can prove in court before a jury, constitutes that this crime falls under this category, into this bucket. And so they file the charges. And then they tell the defendant, the accused, what the charges are. They present the charges. They give the evidence to the legal team, to the defense team, and they begin to mount a defense because all the defense team has to do, which is not an easy task if you're truly guilty or if it's a complicated series of charges, you have to be able to say that there's enough reasonable doubt to say that it didn't happen the way that the prosecution said that it happened. And so it's only when there's laws on the books that have been passed by the appropriate process. It's only when you are arrested and charged with breaking those laws and evidence is presented against you, you're allowed to present or provide a defense. You don't have to testify against yourself. You are allowed to see the evidence against you, face your accusers. You're allowed to cross-examine the witnesses, and the attorneys and your legal team can try to plant a little bit of doubt, a reasonable amount of doubt, to say that the crime alleged was not committed because they didn't reach the burden of proof. And that's the process. Now, what's interesting is if you ask the average Democrat or the average person who hates Trump to tell you what Trump did wrong, I've talked about this before, they have no idea. They have no idea what they're talking about. Now, occasionally you might find some highly self-righteous, elitist Democrats who can explain it, but they have to explain it in ways that doesn't make sense to the rational mind. But this is how they go about this. A lot of folks either don't care, that's one group, or another group of people go to great detail and length to explain this in ways that has no practical value, and it really can't be understood in any meaningful way. Meanwhile, if you look at the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, that's really easy to understand. I mentioned this, again, it wasn't long ago, so I just want to be very brief here. Hunter Biden takes in electronic devices to be serviced and worked on in a computer repair shop in Delaware. He leaves the devices, doesn't pay for them. There's a clause in the contract that says if you don't reclaim or pay for your products, your property within X amount of days, 90 days or whatever it is, then it becomes the property of the repair shop. Hunter Biden did not come back. They took possession, the repair shop. In the process, as he was working on these computers, though, or looking into them, he found some really concerning things, and he, the repair shop owner, had contacted law enforcement, I believe someone at the FBI, and provided this to them. Now, nothing was ever heard about that. That vanished. That went into the archives of the FBI, and they were going to do, I believe, what they often do when these sorts of things come up, when they pertain to people who are on their, the political party or the ideology that is defended in this country, which is that of the Democrats. It was basically thrown away. It was ignored. Luckily, the computer repair shop guy made a copy of it. And he tried to get someone to pay attention, eventually got it before Rudy Giuliani. They eventually dug into that, and they thought, whoa, what is going on here? It looks like from the evidence on this computer that there's a lot of messages that seem to suggest and implicate the, at the time, Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, doing special favors or having meetings with countries, and then they suddenly, these same people or people they're connected to, suddenly send large amounts of money to Hunter Biden and his business. And then, I don't know, what does Hunter Biden do? What was he getting these large checks for? No one's ever even explained this. No one has any interest in this in the media because they didn't like the story. They didn't want the story. This was a story that was stopped from spreading in the days before the 2020 election. You'll remember this by social media. They shut this thing down. They called it, 51 intelligence officers called it Russian disinformation. Can't believe that. This was a continuation of what they did, we're finding out, in 2016. When Obama effectively did that. We went through that last week. I don't want to go through that again. Suffice it to say, I can explain to you precisely what the allegations are about Hunter Biden. The average person can understand that. That makes sense. The charges against Trump and the way that they've been argued and explained, and how he was charged with something, the way the law was applied in ways that had never been applied before, the average American cannot even begin to explain that. And that's because they wanted there to be a crime, so they created it. When it was the case of Hunter Biden, allegedly, there's evidence to suggest there was a lot of things going on there. Likewise, with Hillary and the email scandal, that was a debacle, my friends. Absolute, utter debacle. One of the biggest challenges for conservatives like you and me is to find ways to ensure that our values align with what we do, including how we invest. That's why I love what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and your values. So you're not funding things that go completely against what you believe in. Plus, they do all the heavy lifting for you, helping align your investments with your purpose and your goals. Here's the best part. They'll help you find out right now if your current investments, what you have in investments right now, reflect your values. All you've got to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd. Take the assessment. It's easy to do. It's quick. I've done it. You can too. That's 48financial.com/Todd. Quick timeout, my friends. Back in just a minute.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, my friends. Final segment of the program, by the way, brought to you in part by Freedom Marketplace. This is something that we have created here at the Todd Huff Show. It is a place where you can find businesses who share your conservative principles and values. They're pushing in the same direction you are. This allows you to have people that you can buy products and services from who are not trying to then take those profits from the things you buy, the services you buy, and then undermine everything else you're trying to do politically, the things you stand for, the values you have. It's free for you to use. Check it out. freedommarketplace.net is the website. Again, freedommarketplace.net. Really quickly, so the Senate is looking into the Hillary email scandal, I guess. And that is something that we talked about years ago back when we started this program in 2016. Hillary, it was the same sort of deal. It was very similar to what has been alleged to have happened in the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, which basically means Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. There would be meetings and certain things happen. And then between herself and countries or people within certain countries, and then large donations would show up for the Clinton Foundation. Large donations would show up. This all, by the way, virtually came to a screeching halt. Donations plummeted after she lost the 2016 election. I mean, it's a major, major coincidence. She was busted. She did a lot of this communication, and sometimes a lot of official government business on emails that were private, because she knew that if it was an official email of Hillary Clinton's State Department email address, it was part of the National Archives. It belonged to the government. So she thought she could circumvent this by having allegedly a secret email server that she hid in the bathroom. I remember saying this. The bathroom had 4 walls and a door. She thought that constituted a secure environment. She thought that was an effective firewall. And so that's what she was doing. She was having communication that should have been happening on her official account, allegedly on this private server, to kind of bypass all of that. Some nefarious stuff, some questionable stuff, and then money coming into the Clinton Foundation. She said that she had 2 phones. She had to have 2 phones because one email went to one phone and one email went to the other. They used a program, or at the time there was, I don't know if it still exists, something called BleachBit, which allowed you to go in and wipe the history of communications on your devices. They did that. They also smashed devices before they turned those in with hammers. Do you remember all this? We were told that this is just normal behavior. And I remember saying at the time, I guess this is, you get to the end of your contract on your cell phone, it's time to turn it in. Who among us has not grabbed a hammer and smashed our smartphone? I mean, the ridiculous things they ask us to believe. The Senate is beginning to reopen this. Now, once again, I'm not here for political retribution, but I am here for justice. And we cannot, if these things that we've talked about here this morning are allowed to fester and to continue and to go unchecked and ignored, that is unacceptable. As I said before, you should not You should not go after someone because of their political affiliation, political beliefs, whatever. Likewise, you should not choose to you shouldn't choose to avoid going after them because of their political beliefs. You should go after them if the evidence suggests that you should. That's what you should do. And that's what we're having, I would say, a reawakening to that in this country. And there's going to be some bumps, and there may even be people that once the evidence is all out, we realize that that one may not have fit the bill. And I'm not here, I will be here to oppose that if that happens. But when justice is truly pursued and when context, the context justifies the behavior, then we need to pursue these things with all of our might. And so I'm glad to see this. Some people had hoped that we would see things like this, and here it is. It's upon us. We'll see where it goes from here, but there you go. All right, that's all I want to say about that today. I want to say in conclusion here, just a few words about the air show I went to. If you're a fan of aviation, and you've not been to the EAA, whatever the show, the trade show, the air show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, I encourage you to check this out. It is. I talked about it in the Todd Talk today. I normally don't talk about things like this in Todd Talks, but I did. This is an aviation feat. What happens there? The number of aircraft that come into this little tiny airport. And for this week, the Oshkosh Airport becomes the busiest airspace, the busiest control tower in the entire world. There are planes landing constantly. They are landing on perpendicular runways. There are small aircraft. They come in literally 90 degrees to the runway. They land them on the dot, as they say. There's colored dots. They say aim for this dot. You come in at a 90-degree angle. You make a hard left turn. That's what they were doing when we were there. A hard left turn, and then you aim to land, to touch your aircraft down on the next dot, which was a pink dot, I believe. That's your target. And they do this so as to allow, it's a very long runway, but you can land multiple aircraft sometimes on the same runway. They use the taxiway at one point. It is masterful. It is a masterful thing to watch. Some great planes there as well. I'm a fan. They didn't make me a fan of aviation, but they made me a fan of their show. I gotta go. SDG.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.